If you're already familiar with German, you'll know that some words are masculine, some are feminine, and some are neuter. And let's not forget the plural. Of course, this doesn't just include the obvious things like men, women, children, and people in general, but less obvious ones like cheese, butter, bread, and tomatoes. Also, you'll know that German has 4 cases: nominative, accusative, genitive, and dative. Actually, Germans traditionally list them in order: nominative, genitive, dative, and accusative, which is odd, but it's their language to do what they like with. Still, I'm sticking to the order I learned because that's the order I learned them in. What are cases? Well, English used to have cases, but doesn't now, except for personal pronouns. We say, I see the man, but the man sees me. That's the last remaining bit of a case system. In German, we say, ich sehe den Mann, but der Mann sieht mich. You notice that the word for the changes depending on whether the man comes before the verb or after it. No, actually, let's be more specific. It depends on whether the man is the subject of the sentence or the direct object. We can summarise the cases like this: nominative for the subject, accusative for the direct object, genitive for the possessive, and dative for the indirect object. Multiply that by 3 genders and a plural, and that's 16 different ways of saying the. Look closer though and you notice that some of these are the same, which sounds great but means you have to watch out a bit. The difference between nominative and accusative can only be seen with singular masculine nouns. This table is good for one type of determiner, but we have to learn a different table for a second class of determiner. Plus, any adjectives we use take grammatical endings, which depend on the gender, number, and case of the noun, and whether or not we use a determiner. This is what puts many people off learning German in the first place, but actually once you get past this hurdle, the rest is not so bad. A word of comfort though, sometimes even the Germans get it wrong. Not only that, but the system is starting to break down. You see, the point of a case system is that you can put the words in any order you like. If you have a sentence like Hans bites the dog and change the word order to the dog bites Hans, the meaning changes. But in German you can say Hans beißt den Hund or den Hund beißt Hans, and both sentences mean the same. The den shows that it is Hans who does the biting, and the dog that gets bitten. But that doesn't work very well in German anymore. If you change the animal to a female cat and say Die Katze beißt Hans, suddenly you don't know who's doing the biting. Is Die Katze nominative or accusative? In practice, Germans actually do what English speakers do and rely on word order more than case. The cat bites Hans.
Aua!
But it's the genitive case that is truly on the way out. This is the case that shows possession. When we learn German at school, we're taught that to say the man's hat, we need to use the genitive of the man and say der Hut des Mannes. The thing is, you almost never hear a German actually say that. When journalist Bastian Sieg wrote his book about German grammar, he chose a title that lamented the passing of the genitive case. The dative is the death of the genitive. Now, in good proper German, that would be der Dativ ist der Tod des Genitivs. But he wanted to make a point that the dative is now replacing the genitive, so he called it der Dativ ist dem Genitiv sein Tod. Except that he was wrong. Or partly wrong. That's a construction that is only used in some dialects in southern Germany. Everywhere else in Germany, nobody says that. Instead, people do say der Dativ ist der Tod vom Genitiv. Vom is short for von dem and means from the or of the. As you'll remember if you learned your cases, dem is the dative case. So the genitive is one case you don't need so much nowadays. You may have learned in school that if a picnic is called off because of the weather, you should say wegen des Wetters. But more and more Germans are saying wegen dem Wetter, much to the annoyance of Bastian Sieg and the confusion of foreigners who carefully learnt their cases. Of course, the genitive hasn't completely disappeared yet. It's still preferred in formal written German, and if you're a foreign student learning the language, you'll be expected to know your genitive inside out. But if you find learning your cases a bit of a bore, take comfort in the fact that so do Germans.